What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here, your host of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast, here with a quick hitting topic and discussion. Folks, if you are new to the show or the channel or the podcast, you know that my primary content is through podcast episodes, and those podcast episodes are typically 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. Before I started doing video, they were almost an hour. I understand the need to get out more content, so I've started to do these drive-in and drive-home episodes, but I also understand the importance of video. So let's get in with a brand new episode, short and sweet. Is Frank Reich done in Carolina? And I say that because this past week, he took back the play calling. And if you listened to the drive-in or whatever I called it, drive-home episode, you heard me talk through the reasoning and breaking down what Frank said in the presser. And if you're brand new and you don't know what's going on, there's a lot that's happened in this entire offseason and in-season, up to 8 or 9 months, where Frank comes in, he hires Thomas Brown. He didn't know Thomas Brown before. That's unheard of in the NFL industry, but he feels really good about him. It's a bright future. Frank starts in the summer by saying, I'm going to manage the play calling. At some point, I will pass it over to Thomas. So all season long, we're sitting here waiting. When is he going to give it up? And it doesn't help that the offense looked terrible for the first 6 games that Frank Reich was here. It was just one of the worst pieces of offense that we've seen with a brand new rookie quarterback that's, number 1 overall pick that you're the guru. So you're supposed to bring him in here and develop. I'll quickly jump into the numbers and get back on discussion here. I've been tracking this along the way as we've gone into the season, just looking at the points breakdown. And so let's look at what's happened over the first 6 games when Reich was calling plays, in the last 2 games, or 3 games, I should say, with Thomas Brown calling the plays. Number 1, with Thomas Brown calling plays, we got to win. We've also had 3 completions or 3 passes of 40-plus yards that were completed. That did not happen under Frank Reich. One of the things that Thomas Brown emphasized, although he never said it in any of his pressers, it was said at one of the pre-games on the Fox show, that he would like to take a shot downfield every single time, or once per quarter, not every time. He's taking a shot downfield every time. We're playing Madden. Anyways, over the span of the first 6 games, we know we looked terrible. A lot of our scoring came in the fourth quarter in garbage time when we were down, and there were mistakes by Bryce. The offense itself is just terrible in general. So at the bye week, it made sense to go ahead and turn this over to Thomas Brown and let him take the reins. There's nothing to lose when you've won no games at that point. The other thing about this offense under Frank Reich was in the first 6 games when he's calling plays, we scored 6 points in the third quarter, which shows me we don't have the ability to make adjustments coming out of halftime. When Thomas Brown took over these last 3 games, we scored 13 points in the third quarter. So adjustments being made by Thomas Brown. Anyways, we're back on topic to talk about Frank Reich, and all this ties in together. During the presser, where Frank Reich comes in and says, hey, this is about me taking over, and I wouldn't be in this position I am, or am in this position I am because of my experience as an offensive coordinator. Okay, well, you're about to be out of no experience when you are fired as the head coach, because I feel like it's coming. And the pressure's there because there's no way that Frank Reich takes over this play calling without knowing that this is an audition. This is an audition for Frank Reich to prove over the last 8 games that he's the guy. Do I think he's going to get booted in season? No. I think there's going to be more patience here, at least in the short term, to figure out whatever this is. Because the last thing you want is to be known as a franchise and an organization that fires coaches in the middle of the season, and nobody is going to want to come work for that. We saw coaches turning down interviews, but out of this whole thing, maybe the one thing, the feather in the cap of Frank Reich, is how well he gets along with David Tepper. Because also in the presser where he says that he's coming out, taking over the play calling, he also mentioned that he had consulted Tepper about the entire orchestration of this thing with handing it over to Thomas Brown and what the plan was going to look like. And I'm like, is this really the model of this organization, that we have to consult your owner at every turn of what you're going to do, of what you're going to have for breakfast, of who's going to be called up and called down? That shows me that he is very intertwined into the decision making, which a lot of people have said. A lot of people have said this, and here's the thing, though. When you talk about Frank going back and forth on the play calling, if he admits, and he did, that there was not magic that was going to happen with Thomas Brown taking over because of the personnel, why even turn it over to begin with? Because you're setting him up for failure. Why? Give him the experience of, we're on a crappy team. If job security is there, what are you doing? So now you do it, and you're like, oh yeah, actually I think I should be doing this because I don't want to get myself fired and I want to have a job. And you may say, or he may say, that it's not going to impact Thomas Brown and his long-term longevity as a coach and opportunities, but I think it does. I fully think it does. And if I'm Ejiro Evero, which has been the bright spot of this whole orchestration of coaching, I'm out. I'm out as soon as I can. Next year, Ejiro Evero already getting consideration for head coaching jobs. Here's the thing about the defensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball has been the bright spot among everything that's happening because they've been the one that has the ability to adapt. They've been the one that over the past few weeks, you don't see it in the box score because Bryce is throwing, pick sixes and turnovers, and we're just not getting a lot going on the offensive side of the ball, but he's been the bright spot. So going out over these next 8 games, that is the question. This is his audition to prove to us, to prove to Tepper, to prove to everyone that he's the guy that can handle Bryce. Otherwise, I do think Frank Reich could be done. He could be done in Carolina in 1 year. You can throw in Scott Fitter with him. And who comes in next? That's the question. I don't know who is the next best. In a situation where a coach leaves or gets fired, typically it's a complete reset all around. And so unless you're like, hey, yeah, we'll keep Ejiro Evero and a defensive coach that you could have kept with Steve Wilkes. Oh my gosh. Anyways, folks, that's all I got. Drop your information or your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. Y'all have a good one.